Um, well, good morning. It's every week we see a few more people coming in, a few more brave souls that are coming back to the temple. So it's nice to see all of you. And it's very nice to have the temple open and be able to welcome in-person participation. Of course, as we see from the sort of the turnout is not what it might have been. And other things, other factors, we realize it's going to take some time for the temple to, get back to normal. And whatever that normal is, it's going to be a different normal, I think, than the old normal. But also, we've been hearing that on the news that the coronavirus is still around, right? We hear our medical experts state that we're not completely out of the woods because there's still a significant amount of vaccine hesitancy. So by the way, did any of you who got vaccinated, did you win the 1.5 million vaccine lottery? No? If you did, you don't have to tell me. It's okay. And there's also this issue of vaccine distribution inequity, especially among people of color, right? And then on top of that, there's this more contagious so-called Delta variant, right, that's causing concern. And I was kind of made aware of it, how close to home it was, because my son and daughter-in-law are worried because their toddler who goes to daycare, can't get vaccinated yet. He's only 2, and yet he's attending, this public daycare. So they are concerned about the Delta variant also. And then in addition, there's also what I guess we could call the after effects of 15 months of lockdown. There's many businesses that are obviously still struggling to find workers, to fill vacant jobs, as well as, shortages, right? Shortages in various supply chains, one of which is the electronic chips that are used in cars these days. And I think I heard, for example, that used cars have risen in cost by over 30% recently because of the shortages. So 15 months of lockdown, have left their mark. And so given these, and other ongoing challenges and difficulties, I won't name all of them because I think it'd probably bum me out if I did, but given these and other challenges, these are all examples, of course, of what Buddhism calls impermanence or unpredictability. And because of all these things, I'd like to revisit a talk that I heard not that long ago at a seminar here, and I think this talk provided us with some very helpful guidance. Let me get my... So some of you may have attended this seminar back in November 2019. November 2019 was a while ago, but still that was a very turbulent time also in America. You might remember that we were approaching the 2020 presidential election campaign. And so because of that, I think the guest speaker, who was Reverend Patti Usuki, Reverend Patti is the former minister of San Fernando Valley Honganji Buddhist Temple. Because of the turmoil of those times in late 2019, she had titled her presentation, Beyond the Headlines. Because she wanted to share with us the wisdom of the Buddha's teachings in order to help us go beyond or see beyond those headlines. And, in my introducing Reverend Patti, I referred to her as the former minister, and the reason is because since that seminar in November 2019, she has retired. However, for some reason, her replacement, her ministerial replacement, did not work out, and she is now back at the temple. Though retired, she's still a minister, and I think temporarily at least she's taking care of their weekly Sunday services. I was thinking that if Reverend Patti was to give her talk today, she'd probably add this development, of retiring and then having to kind of unretire to her list of the difficulties of dealing with, with impermanence, with change, right? But in any case, I think even though she was hoping in her talk to share the helpful guidance of Buddhism and help sort of counter the stress and anxiety that seems, a constant part of the times we live in, she nonetheless had to admit that in actuality, quote, many people seem to be turning away from religion. Instead of religion, some people turn to new religions like shopping malls, casinos, and browsing Amazon.com. But do they really help, or do they merely provide temporary escape? You don't have to answer that right now. But I have to admit that thinking about Reverend Patti's, I guess you could say basically rhetorical question, right? Thinking about that question is kind of painful to me personally, because I've personally indulged in all those escapes in the past, in the recent past. Actually, I'm thinking of indulging in them again in the not-too-distant future, because, although pleasurable, they are temporary escapes. I just want to clarify one thing, though, that, regarding casinos, I only go there for the buffets, not to gamble. I just want to make that clear. Right. But in any case, despite all the distressing news, that's swirling around us, and despite the fact that Reverend Patti herself had mentioned that she, like most of us, was feeling, worn down by the issues of politics, social injustice, climate change, income inequality, and homelessness. But she did nonetheless share with us guidance from the wisdom of the Buddha's teachings, and all this guidance, I think, helped promote in us a deeper understanding of these contemporary issues, and also a deeper understanding of our basic human nature. So, like many or like most Buddhist teachers, he had also pointed out that what usually makes studying Buddhism a less desirable option is that, unlike those more appealing temporary escapes like malls, casinos, and online shopping, Buddhism traditionally requires something that most of us are unwilling to do. So in all time-honored Buddhist schools, we are encouraged to engage in one or another kind of practice of what's called self-examination. Whether this is through studying the Buddha's teachings, through meditation and mindfulness practices, or in our Shin tradition, the practice of Nembutsu, or Namu Amida Butsu. So all Buddhist traditions agree that advancing on the path towards enlightenment or awakening requires one to first honestly reflect on the role that our own self-limitations play in contributing to our difficulties. This is something that most of us don't want to do. One of my teachers, or many of my teachers, I think often used to talk about the Buddha, the Dharma, as a mirror that, sort of reflects back at us what we look like, what we really look like, which is ignorant, selfish, bombu, and other kinds of negative kinds of characteristics that we have because of our ego self. I think Reverend Patti, though, was, as a very kind and compassionate teacher also, she was not saying that we're responsible for all of our difficulties. I think she had said that it's, of course she had said that it's certainly true that, quote, human greed on the part of those in power drives the inequities that are at the root of much societal discord. So she had, acknowledged that, much of the difficulties that we experience are the result of the materialistic society that we live in, and the racially, unfair society that we live in. But at the same time, she had clarified that from the perspective of Buddhism, it's critical to see one's own greed. Isn't it true, she had asked, that we tend to compare ourselves to others and think that we can only be happy when we have what our neighbors, what our colleagues, or what celebrities have, end quote. And then, of course, this greedy tendency of ours then makes us easy prey for slick advertisements that promise, as she had put it, happiness as long as we purchase this car or that cheeseburger. Well, when Reverend Patti mentioned how our greedy tendencies make us easy prey for slick advertisements, I do remember having this kind of, I guess you could say, cynical and rather un-Buddhistic thought. Since we are easy prey for slick advertisements, I was thinking, what would happen if someone who was familiar with the Buddha's teachings, someone who is familiar with the Buddha's detailed analysis of how our egos make us easy prey, what would happen if that person was then to use this information for the wrong reasons? In other words, what if someone who knew the teaching of the Second Noble Truth, that we humans are innately prone to greed and self-attachment, and someone who knew that we have this mistaken belief in a separate self whose needs must urgently be met before anyone else's needs, and someone who knew that because we're not mindful of the present moment, we live in the past or live in the future, which increases our anxiety and makes us even easier prey to advertisements that promise us relief. Well, what if someone like that, someone who knew the Buddhist teachings, but then turned to the dark side, to use a Star Wars term, couldn't they become very rich and very powerful? Don't answer that. But yes, as Reverend Patti had clarified and as the Buddha taught, it's this self-attachment and perennial dissatisfaction with things as they are that is the deeper cause of our suffering. And so, not surprisingly, Reverend Patti had said that in order to ease our self-caused suffering and difficulty, we first must honestly examine the self within and see these limitations of the self. This is actually, in our Shin Buddhist tradition, this is the meaning of the word namu in Namu Amida Butsu. It's a self that honestly sees the self's own limitations. Also, it's why we bow when we say it. But actually, she clarified that although this can be quite difficult to do, this self-examination can be quite difficult to do, as she put it, this seeing ourselves as we really are not only helps lift the veil of our ignorance, it also helps us better understand others, even those we dislike. So clearly, this kind of deeper understanding of ourselves and others can help smooth out and improve our relationships with others. As she had put it in her closing statement, Reverend Patti said, quote, "Listening to the Buddha Dharma can help you ride over the bumps of life." I thought that was a great way of putting it. And then maybe most importantly, Reverend Patti stated that a person who sincerely follows the Buddha's teachings and honestly examines themselves can, quote, begin to see the bigger picture, which she had repeatedly emphasized throughout her talk, is the interdependence and interconnectedness of all life. And furthermore, seeing this bigger picture, one would then naturally be able one would naturally be led to engaging in what she called the best antidote for the often distressing news. And what is that antidote? This antidote is joining together with others and working for the common good. So I remember that one of the examples she cited was the work of the 18-year-old climate activist Greta Thunberg. I'm sure you all know Greta as a great example of someone who not only sees this interdependence, but someone who also arguably represents the encouraging phenomenon of young people all over the world who are coming together and making a difference. And now, before I conclude my talk, I just want to add that I think that what made Reverend Patti's talk especially powerful and timely is that it was ultimately pointing us to see this bigger picture, this interdependence and interconnectedness of all life, and then realize that it's not some kind of mysterious truth that only certain special people can realize. We can all realize it. And then moreover, as the Buddha himself always taught, this interdependence and interconnectedness has always been there. However, only now with our experiences of the difficulties and challenges of life, with our encounters with impermanence, are we able to appreciate it, because impermanence challenges our sense of self. And because of that, we're made to see the self as it really is, and we realize we're not as in control. We are not as independent as we thought we were. And when we look around us, we see that it's not just us, but everyone that is experiencing difficulty. And in realizing that everyone is experiencing the same difficulty, something opens up within us. Some kind of connection arises between ourselves and others. Whether we are aware of it or not, sooner or later, impermanence sensitizes us to our interconnectedness. Literally, the entirety of humanity worldwide, all of us, are in the same impermanent and interconnected boat. And then one final point is that whereas malls, casinos, and online shopping, as appealing as they are temporary escapes, realizing our interconnectedness does not result in a temporary escape. Why? Because it is an eternal reality, and realizing it results in a permanent transformation. As our Shin Buddhist founder, Shinran, would say, realizing this truth, we reach the stage of non-retrogression. Ultimately, Reverend Patti Usuki's insightful presentation helped all of us more clearly see how the Buddha's teaching clarifies our true relationship to each other and to the world as a whole. Our true relationship to each other and to the world as a whole. In my understanding, seeing this relationship, seeing this interconnectedness, is the whole point of the Buddha's teaching. Thank you for listening. Now I'm done.